Halo Episode 2 review, an episode so boring that coffee wasn't enough to keep me awake. I had to go and suckle directly on the beans. Honestly, I can't even imagine what prompted them to make this episode. Episode 2, and we're already into heavy filler. Nothing happened throughout the entire episode. In fact, even at the end of the episode, if we just deleted this from existence, it wouldn't change anything. We'd just be back at the end of episode 1, except this time, it's improved. So all in all, I wish this entire thing didn't exist and we could just delete this from the universe. Much like the series itself. This episode is a lot like CW. It's just a lot of feelings in hallways. Oh, how everyone must care about your feelings. I mean, these characters don't exist, but for some reason, I'm supposed to care about their emotional well-being. I've not quite worked it out yet. Honestly, if your fifis are meant to be important, the only feeling this episode made me feel was sick throughout the entire episode itself. And tired, but I don't think that's an emotion, it's more of a biological reaction to trying to desperately survive without suffering extreme brain damage. But if you're interested in my other reviews, there's a playlist down in the description below. But for now, we're gonna get into episode 2, and we start with this camera angle. I don't know whether they're trying to make him seem big and bulky or something, but instead, it just looks completely out of proportion, and I don't really know why. This is Master Chief as a kid. Does anyone care? I certainly don't. I only care about Master Chief as an adult, mainly because that's when he starts shooting aliens. I don't know, I'm a simple man of simple tastes, but all in all, I think mine would have resulted in better television. But instead, we find out that, oh, he's living in an army barracks, and for some reason, he's getting up in the middle of the night and sneaking out. But there's drones patrolling, and obviously, all he does is hide in a doorway for its light to pass. It's like Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. And the thing is, even though we can clearly see that the light of that drone is pointing in his direction, for some reason it can't see him. And obviously if you're policing a load of super soldiers this hard and they want to escape, the way you'd stop them doing that is not just drones, but also a really small chain link fence. Yeah, but obviously you're meant to think that this is where Master Chief escapes. I don't know why. I mean, we've already seen his adult nature. We know he works for the UNSC. I don't know why they're trying to bait us into that. He's even got a buddy with him he's trying to escape with. Oh yeah, this is an absolute top-class plan that we know fails because we've already seen the future, and also nobody cares about this. So we learn that Master Chief agreed to leave with this guy that I'm not going to learn the name of, and together they're going to escape, or maybe not, judging by that face. He's got his gun on him, and he's like, no, you need to go back. You can't escape. Why? Because Mummy said so. You've got Master Chief in his prime, in his suit, and instead we have to go back and watch him as a defenseless, weak little goody two-shoes brat who's shopping his friend into the teacher. And this guy's desperately trying to get him to leave. He's telling him, no, essentially, you're not being educated. This isn't a good place for you. You need to get away. And as far as I can work out, the only reason that he knows this is because he's not been taking his vitamin tablets. No, I'm being serious. Hollywood, everybody, they don't just care about the chemical makeup of your skin anymore. No, now. They also care about your vitamin D levels. How if all of these people were taken as children away from their families, how do they all have different accents? It doesn't make any sense. Because I'm sure if the UNSC were all training super soldiers to be uniformed drones, they would definitely allow them that little bit of individuality. Yeah, that's for sure. I can't imagine going on to the comms to them and giving them an order like, alright, Duck, I'll do that, yeah, just go off up there, alright. Oh, I'm preserving their cultural heritage. Yeah, it doesn't really strike me like something the UNSC would really care about personally. But in the end, he stops trying to convince him that UNSC bad, and just I'm gonna leave anyway, and if you want to stop me, you're gonna have to shoot me in the face. And at this point, I'm like, yeah, can you do it to me too? Because then at least I won't need to watch the rest of the episode. Although if these people do come back and we have to focus on his childhood some more, I might just have to find out how many times my head can hit my desk before it breaks, just for something entertaining to try and do. At this point, I just require the mental stimulation. But eventually, Master Chief decides that no, actually, he's just going to let him go, because they're friends, and Master Chief isn't supposed to feel, but this is also a sign that, oh, maybe he could when he's a child. Oh, it's so transparent and see-through, and we've spent minutes on this, and there's nothing to it. And the only thing worse than this is what happens next. Because he's like, oh, thank you for letting me go. And he's like, you've got 5 minutes. I'm like, what? Why? You've already decided to break your rules, but now there's some arbitrary time on it, especially when his mate goes, can I get 10 minutes? No. What difference does 5 minutes make? You've already broke the rule, but apparently you can only break a rule for 5 minutes before you start feeling guilty about it. The other guy even says that essentially with 5 minutes they'll hunt him down and kill him, and he's like, nah, I don't care, mate. It's like, what is going on? You're simultaneously happy for him to go, but you also want him to get hunted down and killed. What a great friend. But this is Master Chief thinking about it. And this scene is so much more important because we can see his face, the emotion laden with it, and absolutely wouldn't have been better if he put his helmet on. Now he's got a purple face. These are the advantages that you can get by destroying the lore, everybody. Yes, what you've traded in is actually Halo for a guy with a purple face. I hope you're all happy because at this point, I'm desperately trying to make it entertaining because the TV series isn't. When the points I've chosen to talk about this show are people with purple faces, you can tell there's not much story in this one, folks. I do think the ship going through space looks pretty cool. Look, I'm trying to find stuff that's good. It's not my fault. And then we get some A-grade CW writing where she asks how fast are we going, and he goes, it's not about the speed. Yeah, this ought to be good. And pay attention to this one because it's very simple, but in 3 lines, the writers already forgot what they just said. He goes, we're taking a more direct route through space. And she goes, what? So this dude starts to explain because she asked him, what does he mean? And he's like, you should think of space like a ball of yarn. Rather than just going through the ball of yarn, you follow the closest thread, which takes you to your path. And Kwan, in one of the most patronizing voices I've ever heard, goes, you're ruining it. Yes, and you're ruining this show. But despite how often I keep telling you that, you don't disappear or shut up either. So quite frankly, I'm more interested in Master Chief explaining the laws of the universe than you sitting in your chair glowing purple. I think I made it very clear in my last episode that the best thing that this show could do is just eject Kwan into space, and that's what he needed to do here. But don't worry, because this A-grade script writing is coming thick and fast. Where she goes, that thing you took from Madrigal, what is it? And he responds, dunno. I don't know how much you're paying your Hollywood writers, but seriously, it's too much. They say no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, but this is more like the Inquisition of inane questions. So far, we've gone, how's your travel through space? What's that big shiny thing? And why are you doing this? I mean, seriously, this is like having a kid in the back just going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Except with your own kids, you can't just yeet them out of the car. But he has an order to do that to her. He has literally been ordered to solve all of my problems, and we're still not going to do it. Is that why didn't you just take me in and let me kill me? I'm like, yes, please, please. That's the only question on my mind right now. But showing that these writers have probably never even talked to another human being in their life, he goes, would you like to have been executed? And she's like, no. Why? It's wrong. If you thought that that sounded like a discussion about morality between 3-year-olds, I'd agree with you. The reason why this man has betrayed everything he's ever known for his entire life, it is literally, because I thought you wouldn't like that. Seriously, I'm gonna have to be right back and just start eating coffee beans like popcorn. And just look how this scene's set up. He's massive, she's tiny. It looks like father and daughter going on a car ride. We've literally got a guy babysitting someone he found on a planet. And he still doesn't have his helmet on, which, is quite important. And that was the entire intro sequence. I don't know if you've watched my other videos, but at the start, I'd try and hit it off with something pretty fast. But in this, it seems like they attempted to bore people into a coma, simply so they couldn't press the button on their remote to change the channel. But don't worry, I'm sure the rest of the episode's going to be interesting. We're back on the home planet. So Halsey's talking to a general, and honestly at this point, I really don't care about their names, so if you expect me to, I'm sorry. And Halsey's talking about how, I think it's got something to do with that object he brought back about why he's behaving weirdly. Oh, really? The only new variable that's been introduced to his life could somehow have something to do with him behaving oddly and different than the rest of his life. I can see why you're the scientist, love. But he asks, what is it exactly? And she says,
I don't know.
That's why she gets paid the big bucks. And he says, I think that's the first time I've ever heard the brilliant Captain Halsey say that. Tell the type Bs in STEM how amazing they are. They can be in STEM, everybody. Do you want to go and do STEM? If you're a little child watching this show, you can be in STEM. Believe me, this is the most entertaining I can make this pile of trash. And he's like, can you tell me anything about the device? He says, well, what I can tell you is 20 elites went to go and get it. I'm like, I think he knows. He's probably read the mission brief. And then he goes, well, if they want it, we want it. Oh, congratulations on your military strategy. The writers of this show are of a standard where we're lucky that the keyboard got invented because they wouldn't have been able to work out how to hold a pen. And yet we're supposed to ask them to come up with military strategy, and so they come up with it, well, you know, we want it too. I kind of think if I went into the writer's room, I'd just find them all there, drooling on their own shoes. Who knows, maybe the script themselves is simply water damage on a keyboard. He's like, do you know how I rose to this position? Well, I don't know. Judging by your last plan, I can only assume it's because you were underneath the commander's desk. He says it's because I keep my mind clear of unnecessary concerns. Yes, I think your mind is clear of most things most of the time. It's like, if you've got a plan, the committee should hear it. I'm like, okay, I can't wait for this master plan of hers.
I think we need big guns, and we fire the big guns at big people.
She's a type B in STEM, getting what she wants. You go, girl! We know that in this scene, they're talking about Master Chief because they've plastered his face on a wall. Subtle. That's how when these people go, there's still no contact and his beacon is turned off, you're not like, oh, I wonder who they're talking about. Because they plastered his face on a wall.
And she's like, oh, he's gonna come back. He wouldn't leave us.
I still don't know why all these people have different accents. And this dude's like, Chief's always got a plan. It's like, yeah, judging by the last episode, his plan was to let an angry child shoot him in the face. Honestly, at this point, I'm not sure his intellect levels are actually to be trusted as a leader anymore. They're worried about his loyalty. I'm wondering whether he has the mental intellect required to go to the bathroom on his own. But then the full team come in. There were some people that asked why Master Chief removed his helmet so soon in the first episode. Do you get it yet? They wanted his reveal to be a big moment, which means they couldn't reveal anybody else. But they're so desperate to show everybody else that he had to remove it immediately.
Look how many Type Bs we put in the army. Aren't we so stunning and brave?
I mean, look, if you had Kate Beckinsale in one of those suits, I'd be like, hey, take the suit off all you want. But as it is, I think we can all agree we can just keep them on. And if you're thinking he didn't talk about what was said, one of them said they'd track the ship, and the other one said we're just following orders and we'll find out when we need to. And she's like, well, we don't know the orders. She's not even stopped taking her vitamin pills and she's already questioning orders. I don't know, does she have a magic triangle shoved up herself as well? But finally, the Spartans put their helmet on. Let's see how long that lasts, shall we? Here is Master Chief, dropping into an asteroid belt, slipping between two rocks that almost crush his ship immediately. Still doesn't have his helmet on. The psychopaths at Paramount think that,
oh, you can't see his emotion or understand it if you can't see his face.
Which is why the super soldier, with elite training from his entire life, hasn't realized that I should probably put my helmet on when I'm going through an asteroid belt where I could very easily get hit by something and puncture the ship. Now, the actual bit of flying through the asteroids is good. It's just everything else which is awful. So he's like, we exited slip space and now we're immediately in an asteroid belt. And that makes a lot less sense later on when you find out why they did that. Because he's flipping all over the place and she's petrified, which is obviously why she's not getting into the chair with seat belts. Instead, she's standing there gripping onto the chair going, we're all going to die! It's like, oh, that's exactly what I expect of her character and why I still think she should be yeeted out of an airlock. But Master Chief just goes, everybody dies. It's like, yeah, but you might not if you put your helmet on. He even tells her to sit down and buckle up, you know, for her safety, because they're not in a safe environment. So why do you not have your helmet on? He tells her to sit down and buckle up again, because even though she's petrified and thinks she's going to die, she's also too stupid to do anything about it the first time she's told. Going through the asteroid belt is still cool, while she whimpers like an annoying little brat. I'd like to point out at this point, she's now covering her face with her hands, which will absolutely prevent an asteroid hitting her in the face. But either way, they squeeze between these two asteroids. Her magic superpowers have guarded her from it for some reason. And we find out that there's a base in an asteroid. And at this point, I'm like, you are kidding me. Just think of it. There's a load of people living on an asteroid. These people are going to need resources. People are going to need to know about this place to come here. Do you think they all did what we just saw over there? What about the cargo? What about the cargo transports? You know, ships that aren't renowned for their fast speed and maneuverability. There must be some safe place to land where you can come in here, which they've actually protected from the asteroids. There must be. Why didn't you drop out there?
Or it's because the people chasing him, they'll drop into the asteroid belt and hit an asteroid and die.
Well, he didn't, and behind him, he's getting followed by Spartans. You know, the people just like him. If he knows he can fly through it and be safe, he knows that they can too. But at least here he's not a complete mental deficient, and does actually, for once, put his helmet back on. I'll never cease to be amazed by the height difference between the two. She's even closer to the camera. If you want to make it seem like babysitting duty, congratulations. So he walks out carrying the magic triangle into what looks like a really grubby, overpopulated mess. This would fit right into Alien. Everything's falling apart. They kind of look dirty and messy. For some reason, they've got dreads. Nice to know that hairstyles have gone interstellar. I do like the translation on the screen. I'm pretty sure over here, if you rank them, this would actually be worse than the F word they're trying to not use. But this guy sees Master Chief, he's like, oh, get the boss! And then does something very stupid. Everyone points their guns at Master Chief. And let's remember, these are the guns that didn't do anything to the Covenant at all. So they're going to even do less to Master Chief. Luckily, around these unknown deranged lunatics, he's got his helmet on. I mean, she doesn't, but who cares about her? And then she has the nerve to go, this is your plan? You try to protect your face against an asteroid with your hands. Honestly, unless you can use the Force, I don't really think that you should actually be criticizing people on plans. Oh yeah, and in the last episode, you got your entire planet wiped out by aliens and didn't even try and save your father. Let's face it, if we're going to get judgy here, you're the one who'd lose. But they've got a plan. Oh, so you think you can just walk down this alleyway at us? Well, we're going to get some boxes with a forklift and drive them in the way. And I hope you don't obviously go through this clear and obvious man-size gap on this left-hand side of the boxes. No, yeah, Master Chief could definitely climb over this side of the boxes as well. But they're just laughing at him. And remember, they've got guns. But for some reason, think a few boxes that kind of block up a bit of his corridor will completely stop him. He's got guns as well. He can shoot you from where he is. He doesn't need to walk up and punch you in the face. But in a display of just sheer ego, and quite honestly, I'm all for it, he just pushes it back with one arm. And they're all petrified and backing up after just cackling before. What was your plan? Even if he couldn't push that, he's still got a gun or could still climb over it. It wasn't even very tall. You can only write characters of your intelligence or lower, which is why everybody in this show is a complete moron. Oh, look, it's the guy from the intro sequence. I guess that explains why I had to sit through 8 minutes of hell. So this is a guy, I can't remember his name, but that doesn't matter because his entire character is just, I'm the life that you could lead if you left the UNSC. That's all the depth he has. Welcome to the plot of the rest of the episode. But he tells them to all to put their guns down and stop pointing at Master Chief, mainly because, he knows what would happen. And then he goes, nice of you to drop by. And he takes his pissing helmet off again. At the moment, the audience doesn't know what this base is. But he does. And that's why he's an idiot. This is a place full of degenerates and criminals and people who have no place. People not to be trusted, without laws and rules. Essentially, anything goes down here. Obviously, the best thing to do is take your helmet off so that a random stray bullet can hit you in the face around these very dangerous people who absolutely can't be trusted. Yeah, I hope you're really appreciating that guy's wide-ranging facial expressions. Yes, when a character only ever has one facial expression, clearly the thing we need to do is see it all of the time. But don't worry. It gets worse. But they're discussing Kwan and how she got a bounty on her head, and like, oh, UNSC's put a bounty on her? It's like, no, it's not UNSC. And it turns out that someone on the it turns out that a member of the Resistance on her home planet has put the bounty on her. So, you know, both sides want a shot in the face, and quite frankly, I can't blame them at all. I think the entire audience does as well. But they talk about how the rebel leader is cleaning house on his home planet. And the only surprising thing to me was that any of them were alive after how Kwan had lived there for so long. It just seems like at every turn, everyone she ever cares about dies. And it's all her fault, down to her decisions. So here we are now, walking through the criminal underworld after finding out that you've got a bounty on you with no helmet on. Here is home for every misfit, retrobate, and outlaw in the galaxy. Yeah, that really sounds like a place where I would take my helmet off, but they don't stay there for long. And so they go for what is essentially a bus. Luckily, one coincidentally turns up just as they arrive. And even though there is a very limited number of these buses, for some reason, they're the only ones that want to get on one. And as they get on, you do see this guy across the street watching them in a mysterious manner. Oh, is he a bounty hunter going for them? No, literally nothing comes from this for the rest of the episode. I don't know why he's even in the shot. Oh, spooky, he's watching them go. That must mean something. No, it doesn't. I even think on the set they put that in there so it did actually give them a plot point to use, and they just never made anything of it, or it got cut. So as they're the only people that want to go in this very limited bus, because that always happens in real life for me, they get on with no problems, alone. Which is lucky, because you find out that these actually only go to one place. It's probably the most inefficient form of public transport I've ever seen. Now, this is wobbling all over the place. It doesn't look safe. And it gets worse. This is them going down a vertical incline, and they're rocking back and forth. It's crazy. It even throws Master Chief off his balance and makes her grip him. He still doesn't put his helmet on. This is the bus going round a corner on one wheel. They'd be standing over here going, oh no,
I'm gonna die!
Still doesn't put his helmet on. There's sparks flying off the wheels and everything. They run out of track. It yeets out into space. Apparently the roof can open up and grab onto a rope. No, I'm not joking. This is actually what they're doing. So now we're traveling on a rope through this place, and I shouldn't need to explain to anyone how rope works, but ropes only go to one place, and that tunnel only had one rope. It yeeted itself out and just gripped on the rope that was above it. I don't know who those people were that got out of it. You know, the people he ignored and didn't say hi to, but apparently they've just come from his own house. And it's physically incapable of them going anywhere else because they just stay on this one rope and it takes them all the way home. Because that's what these are. It's essentially ropes which take you to an asteroid which you own or share with some other people. I'm so glad we've got this guy's helmet off just so we can see his really expressive face. Honestly, if he only has one expression, so does the helmet. Oh no, I'm sorry. It also allows us to see him looking down, because he can't do that in a helmet for some reason. We have to very obviously make it known that everybody knows about the box. Because now he's looking back at the guy after he's looked at you can see I've got a box. It's about the box. Oh really? It's about the box, is it? Did you just tell him about the box? Yes, I told him about the box. He's told me about the box. I'm going to ignore the box because apparently no one wants to talk about the box. And he says so many secrets. I mean, guarantee you in the writer's room they thought that was really clever. So here we are at home. This is the life that Master Chief could have had. This is his kid, which is a surprise to Master Chief, who thinks that they can't have kids. This is his confused face. Either that or he's taking a crap in his suit. I can't really work out the difference. And I hope you're prepared for this. The most stupid part of the entire episode. Bounty on you. At any point, we could get raided. Because of the bounty, all it takes is one of those many criminals that we've just walked past where you had your helmet off to actually come down here and invade my home. But, Master Chief, I want you to take all of your armor off. The only reason that could make that make sense is if there was a bedroom scene later, but we don't even get the honor of that. Which, let's face it, in modern day Hollywood's pretty surprising that they haven't put that in yet. Here's his wife, actually an actress who's renowned for playing creepy weird woman, and she does it here as well. This is Master Chief in his pajamas. There is zero reason to see Master Chief outside of his armor, because even if he trusts the people in there in this room now, he shouldn't be trusting all of the criminals that he's just walked past. I'm just surprised he's showing him his family and everything after how he treated you last time. I don't think I'd be that nice. But then again, I wouldn't have asked him to strip down into his pajamas, so you know, each to their own. Back with the Covenant, and they're discussing Master Chief actually lighting up the magic triangle. This is where we find out that the woman with a neck brace is a blessed one, as in someone that can interact with the magic triangle and make it actually work. For some reason, the human is interrogating the Covenant, and she keeps telling him to show her what he saw, which I assume because she said show me would be some kind of like hologram of his memories or something, but instead, he gets two fingers, puts them in the air, and just moves them about a bit. He literally makes a ring with his circles in the air and says, the ring. And this satisfies what she said when she said, show me what you saw. Okay, what if he didn't see geometric shapes? What was he supposed to do then? What, were we going to have a game of charades? Was he going to go like 2 words, 3 syllables, first word, and then start dancing around the room? Honestly, I don't know what she expected of him. And she says, are you sure? I mean, do you think he got confused about the extremely simple thing he's just told you?
Are you sure it wasn't a dodecahedron?
Yes, I'm sure that I know what a circle is. I think my brain is about to dribble out of my nose. It's one of the keystones. What, for your chastity belt? We must have it. And she says she'll go and do it herself. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's literally on the screen. Now, the strange thing is, these people are clearly above her. They're sitting higher than her in thrones. And yet, she's not asking them for permission. This gets weird. She walks right up to them and gets in their face and says, I know where I belong. Are you worried that I'll forget? And she's screaming at them at this point. She is shaming them. She is attacking them. The very iconography and how this scene is set up is like they're a king and she's walking up to them and just attacking them. They'd shoot her in the face. But obviously, even though we've just got screamed at by the little girl, for some reason, we've got to praise her up. Oh, you're so important. You're so important. I wonder if how much I despise a show can actually be tracked by how long I spend doing a squeaky voice. But this guy's being nice, especially as he's just got screamed at and he says we question sending someone of your importance on such a hazardous mission. He's caring about her safety. So what's her response? She is screaming at him through gritted teeth. The least you would expect after someone beneath you in the hierarchy doing something like this is some kind of backhand. These are aliens that just want to wipe out all of human life, and they're treating her with kid gloves. I can wong 'em on them like you cannot. It's like, oh. So now she's pleading with them. Oh, after all you've done with me, of course I'll come back. Of course I'll be nice and behave. I'll always commit. Let me do this for you. Let me present you with this gift. Yes, in the span of the last 20 seconds, she's gone from enraged cow screaming at them to actually pleading with them to let him go. Does this just happen once every 4 episodes? I'm not really sure. So what we've got here is essentially a round table out of King Arthur, except for some reason they've left a hole in the middle of it for people to walk through because they can't be bothered to walk around a table. I also don't know why anyone would want to walk through the center of a meeting. It sounds incredibly disrespectful as well. And those lights in the middle don't look particularly efficient, considering that the second circle would absolutely block most of the light from the top one. But they're talking about Kwan's home planet and how the rebel leader they put in charge has been far more tyrannical than they actually expected. I can't even possibly think of what analogy they could be coming up with, and they're absolutely not doing some kind of reference to our real world. They'd never do that. I don't think they would try and poison a sci-fi show with stuff from our real world that they're particularly interested in but can't talk about because for some reason they've been trapped in the hell of working as a Hollywood scriptwriter. And they start talking about how he's, yeah, you know, he might be evil and just start shooting people in the face, but he's also a reliable business partner. And this guy saying none of it matters as long as we get our resources, again, absolutely has no real-world connotations they're trying to get at, very subtly as they beat you in the face with it. And the general congratulates them and goes, oh, congratulations, for once some good news, even though everything that he said wasn't good news. I don't know if you're getting the subtle messaging that they're actually pushing on you here. And obviously this guy isn't pleased with it because he's the one with morals. But then they ask about Master Chief. Is there any news about it? And they're like, yeah, we're hunting for him. And when we find him, his punishment will be commensurate with his crimes. And obviously he looks over at Halsey because presumably they've got some plan there cooking up together. And this guy's like, is that wise? I mean, for once, he's a walking weapon. Are we sure we want to punish him in some way? And he's like, yeah, I know it's bad for morale, but let's face it. He's disobeyed orders. We can't just let him get away with it. I'm like, I don't know, you seem to be letting everyone else get away with everything. It's like, we need to control him though, otherwise what's the point of having him? But of course, Halsey, she uses this as her in. But she says, essentially, we can just use Cortana to control everybody. And we just get a huge dump of information about how they've been giving them pellets to crush their emotions. Yes, it seems that while it did take a magic triangle to wake him up, he could have also just woken up on his own and started feeling things. All he had to do is stop taking his vitamin C pills. They essentially want to replace their normal minds with the Cortana AI. Yes, Skynet's got nothing on this one. Yeah, she may be incredibly intelligent and has never not known a single thing before, but also hasn't seen the Terminator movies. Yes, the upgrade of all of humanity seems to be Type B Tim the Tatman. I gotta be honest, I didn't see that one coming. And the one guy in the room with morals just goes, yeah, but what about Master Chief? We can't just replace his mind. He's a person. And then she goes, he's much more than a person. He's a Spartan. No, you've got that the wrong way around. If he's more than a person, that's even more reason you shouldn't get rid of him. What you meant was lesser. He's not a person. And she spent a long time going, our Spartans are the only weapon against the Covenant, but with the AI, it'll be better. And he grins and he's like, yeah, this is amazing. Skynet. But all isn't over yet, because this woman remembers the paper she wrote where it requires cloned cells, cloned human cells. And she catches her out when you realize that Halsey is using illegal technology to develop Cortana. And all she does is kind of look down and then look at the Admiral as she realizes, oops, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Luckily, he saves her. Go patriarchy. And I think this is meant to be an intelligent plan, but actually, it's ridiculous. As he just turns to the boss and goes, well, you're in charge of Section 3. Just so we can be clear, is this your idea? And this Type B was completely blindsided, had no idea of it, and has specifically told her not to do Cortana. But for some reason, goes yes. Like, I can understand wanting to do sort of internal politics and power plays between an organization, but you actually have to be clever to write it. I think they think that what's just happened here is incredible and difficult and everyone will love it. But if you actually watch it and think about what's just happened, she lost, or should have lost. And she didn't outplay anyone, she just stated what Cortana was. You even get her smug, haha, I outplayed you, at the end. And it's like, no, the only reason you got away with her plan is because she had decided to agree with you for no reason. So we're back on the magical home planet with the UNSC emplaced leader, and we know this guy is evil because he's got a British accent. He's just going along the line shooting them all in the face, and at this point I'm just like, if only Kwan was still on that planet. I mean, at one point Master Chief was going to leave her there in the last episode. Imagine the fun we could have had. It could have made this episode actually worth watching. Instead, this is probably still the best scene of the show, especially this. Like, he picks it up, sees it's a Type B, and then is, like, pleasantly surprised. Not that it actually stops him in any way, shape, or form. Look, if you want a scene that just shows that this guy is pure evil, here you go. We've got it. The problem is, when you've told me that this guy also wants to get rid of Kwan, I can't help but like the chap. But then he sees a drone and decides to blow it out of the air. Now, I'm really hoping that's just a generic news drone or something, because Kwan is, like, looking at the feed, and now she's discussing her fifis in a hallway, which is all we've done for the rest of the episode as well, so you should be used to it by now. She's like, oh, my planet's being controlled by a bad man, and the other woman's like, I know how you feel. And it turns out this woman's lost her entire planet to the Covenant as well, so she literally does know what she's going through. And then she says, I want justice. Revenge and justice are easy to confuse. I mean, I don't know. You can probably get both. They're not exclusive. But I think what you have here is the setup that I talked about in the first episode, of where Kwan somehow becomes mega powerful even though she's incredibly tiny, and will inevitably go around and get justice on the Covenant. He's making Master Chief eat food because the tablet suppresses emotions, which means he also can't taste food and enjoy it. And so this guy is trying to get Master Chief on his side via the power of fruit. I'm not even making this up. He's like, how long do you think till the UNSC comes? He's like, I don't know, probably a day. So the UNSC could arrive at any moment, and this guy is wandering around in his pajamas out of his suit. And what follows is just an exchange about how horrible it was that you gave me 5 minutes, not 10, and that led to me having an awful life. But he asks Master Chief, who are you? And he gets a response, I'm trying to work a few things out. I don't know is the answer. There's so many times that the script will ask a question, and the character will reply, I don't know. It's your job to know. You're a scriptwriter. You're supposed to be telling me what's happening and the reasons for these characters doing things. But apparently, you don't even know why anything of this is going on, so I don't know why I should care. And this is where we find out that essentially if he stops taking his vitamin C tablets, then all of the emotional suppression and the ability not to have kids will eventually go away as it all gets out of his system. Which seems pretty dangerous to me if all of your control around the Spartans is solely based upon them voluntarily taking some pellets that they carry with them everywhere. And if they stop taking them, then they just wear off and you would lose all control over them. It doesn't seem like Halsey had that good a plan. But then the kid comes up and he stamps his hand with a smiley face. But he asks what it is and she essentially goes, well, it's a sign that you can trust him and he can trust you and he'll always be on the same side. I'm like, well, okay. But he's known him for about 12 seconds. I don't think this is a big deal to have a smiley face on your hand. But he seems obsessed with it and he's like staring at it as if something amazing has just happened. This is the quality of the script, ladies and gentlemen. This guy has one expression and I just want him to put the helmet back on. Now I'm going to have same expression but lower down as I get on child's height. And he's like, thank you for this. And it's like, it's not like he's never experienced this before or not happened. We've already seen that the other Spartans are on his side, how he's always got a plan, how the way they were talking, it was obvious. When someone's like, he would never leave us, there's some kind of attachment there, no matter how muted it might be under the vitamin C tablets. And if there shouldn't be in the Halo universe, don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger of what the show was saying. Look at the height difference between the two. How small is she? She comes up to his elbow. Is she meant to be a 5-year-old? I'm confused about this because she's definitely standing on his left and she's vanished. I mean, what's going on? Where did she go? No, we needed her out of the shot so we can see his one expression slightly turned. But don't worry, because the Spartans are coming for them. And like, this is weird. It seems that he entered an asteroid belt. Why would he do that? You'd think they'd have some kind of, like, spies who would obviously have to know the underground and therefore would have told them of the location of this base long ago. So this is two Type Bs arguing over who gets the magic triangle when it arrives, even though they don't have the magic triangle, so I don't know why you're either even having this discussion right now. And all we've got is basically an argument of, like, equity. Oh, well, Halsey already gets all of the funding. I'm like, well, if she gets all of the funding, then maybe she's better equipped to actually study this than you are, who when you're underfunded. But no, she gets everything, wah, and I want it, wah. It's like, oh, why is everybody in this so annoying? They all act like children. And she says, all of our advances in slip space technology cloaking, and armor and shields all come from my research. All of them. All I have to say, if you have individually done all of that, then you would have thought they'd hold you in higher regard. It's almost like someone's telling porcupines. Yeah, I mean, I did come from a lab where everyone else also discovered all of this stuff, but it's all mine. I did all of it. She's like, I could make great strides if I had you on my side. Why do you need somebody else on your side? It seems like you're doing a marvelous job as it is. You've discovered so much all on your own. But apparently now, for some reason, you think you can only actually do something if somebody else provides it for you for no reason that you haven't earned. So like your mother, except you lack the polish. I've had enough of being manipulated today. Like, manipulated? Was that supposed to be manipulation? Nothing happened in the scene. It was talking about your fifis in a corridor, but apparently that was the height of manipulation. Oh, I'm glad you told us, because I certainly wouldn't have gathered that otherwise.
Just give me freebies. I demand everything. Wah!
I don't know why every type B in this is incredibly annoying. I don't know why you're writing all of your type B characters as incredibly annoying and entitled and angry and rage-inducing. I don't know if you're trying to make them powerful or whether you're just deliberately humiliating them all. But every single one of them is entirely repulsive. But finally, he's showing the magic triangle to the guy he came to, presumably, talk about the magic triangle with? I don't know why it's taken this long. And then it happens again. The guy asks him, what does it do? And Master Chief replies, I don't know. All the time, this series has people asking questions and they just say, I don't know. But the guy's like, I can see it lying in your eyes. What does it do? And it's like, no, he genuinely doesn't know, but we don't have to keep repeating it over all of the script. He's not lying, he just doesn't know. And she's like, it powered a ship. It's like, yeah, but is that what it's for? I mean, nobody still knows what it does. We just know that's what it did once. I'm not sure that helps. And he turns this one expression on her, presumably to say, why are you telling this guy it? If I wanted him to know, I would have said it myself. But I can't tell because he doesn't say anything and he's got one expression. And then we get this.
Oh, I don't know.
Stop saying I don't know, it's driving me literally insane. I mean, The Matrix had a meme of them kind of doing this sort of thing, but this, it's every 5 minutes. But the guy, admittedly, just chads out and grabs it. And they're all like, stop! And then realize that actually nothing's happening. And we get the slightly confused face of his one expression. But don't worry, because he knows a guy, because obviously he does. What a coincidence that the one place that you could physically come to in the entire universe, because it's full of criminals, also happens to have one guy on it that you know, who knows one guy that knows about this midstream magic circle that does things that nobody knows what it does or why. I don't even know if what I said just makes sense, but that is the plot of the show. And then Master Chief goes, no, I shouldn't have said anything. And I'm like, well, why did you come here then? It doesn't really make any sense. Otherwise, why are you here? To watch the Super Bowl? I don't even know if it's what he's meant to achieve if it's not to find out what the triangle's for. But it turns out this guy knows a guy who was taken into a Covenant ship and escaped and survived. And for some reason, just because he happened to be in the location of a Covenant ship at some point in his life, he thinks he'll know all about a magic triangle that no one's ever seen or heard of before. It seems a bit of a reach. A Halo reach. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. Look, I like puns, and that one was particularly bad even for me, but I'm pretty sure I'm being driven insane by this show, and so any kind of quality bar's gone out the window, I'm afraid. And he's like, he knows things. Trust me. I'm like, well, he'll be the first person in the show because everyone else doesn't know a single thing about anything the moment they're asked about it. So now, we're walking back through the den of criminals, outcasts, and scum. A complete hive of scum and villainy. And Master Chief still doesn't have his helmet on. He's gotten to all of the effort to put his armor on, so at least that's something over his pajamas, but hasn't decided that his brain needs protection, because, you know, you get shot in the brain, it's not like it's a big deal, is it? It's not like he might need any of the targeting HUD inside his helmet, which identifies threats. No, he doesn't need any of that, no. Just to kind of reinforce the stupidity of Master Chief, we now cut to a guy holding a gun on him. Definitely doesn't need his helmet, though. This is a scene where he stops for food at a takeaway van. No, I'm not making that up. But he inputs a code to a locked area, and they describe the guy they're about to meet as sensitive, which is very much like me describing the plot of this show as unique. The weirdest part is how he describes this as a refuge, because it looks remarkably like a prison. You've even got people gripping the bars trying to intimidate you as you walk past. And Master Chief still doesn't put his helmet on. He's on an asteroid, surrounded by scum and villainy, and then enters what looks like either a prison or an insane asylum. Still doesn't think that anyone's dangerous enough in order to put his helmet on. This is why all their big five-head reasons about, why we had to take it off, because it was all about a journey. It was a mission statement to see how Master Chief really is. But because instead what we've got a writer so obsessed with showing his face in order to annoy Halo fans that they make him look like a moron. And then she walks up to the prisoners right next to his gate like it's a zoo and wonders why he steals her food from her, even though the food that was given to her was specifically for them in the first place.
Oh, look at all these animals. The crazy people.
Honestly, it just made me dislike her even more. But now we've got this guy who, the moment anyone tries to talk to him, scurries behind a table. Yeah, no one will see you there, mate. But we do find out that this guy's gate isn't even locked. He just walks in. So this guy is purely in his cage because he doesn't want to leave. Now, the weird thing is he immediately walks up to Master Chief and gets around crotch height, which leads to this shot being particularly uncomfortable. But they have a discussion about whether he's seen the Covenant or not, and it's like, of course he has. He's a Spartan. But then it gets worse because he sees Kwan and immediately starts fawning over her because she's a Type B, and so obviously a Type B who's the main character has to be the key to everything. Because they're so original, these scriptwriters. Because he asks her name, and she's like, it's Kwan Ha, and he's like, yes, you are! Particularly creepy, but apart from that, it's boring. It's trying to insinuate that somehow the Covenant know about it. It's like, which would be impossible for them to do. Like, we're gonna have, like, they've seen drawings of her or something. It's all been predicted in the future that this girl who's the key to everything will come back and destroy the Covenant or something. Please don't do that. It's gonna be awful. Kwan has to be trained by the Master Chief to fight the Covenant. This episode is painful enough, I don't need that on my plate. But they use this opportunity to show him the magic triangle. And he's like, where did you get this? I don't know. You seem to know about it, and you saw it with the Covenant. So you'd think he'd assume the Covenant. But then we get an info dump about how essentially the Covenant's entire religion revolves around things like the magic triangle because they were left behind by people who came before. The Forerunners, you might say. And he says, when I was a guest on their ship, which is a weird way of putting it, they wanted to see if he could get the magic triangle to work, and he couldn't. What, so they let you go? I mean, how did he escape? Now remember, this guy knows that he can't activate this thing, but is still acting like it's a big deal that he's about to try. And he touches it and nothing happens. As he knew wouldn't happen, because he's tried before. I don't even get this bit. And then he bursts out laughing, manically. For no reason. We're trying to overcome lack of talent with creepiness. Congratulations! And he's like, I'm not a blessed one. Or as other people say, a blessed one. What's a blessed one? You mean blessed one. And he's like, it's a human, only more so. And he basically means a blessed one is someone that can interact with the magic triangle. Cool, we needed an entire scene for this. But Master Chief asks him, what does it do? And for once, in this entire series, he didn't say, I don't know. Instead, he says, you don't want the Covenant to destroy us, do you? I mean, he's already asked him before and got told that he slaughters the Covenant, so he's got his answer, but for some reason, we're asking it again. And the guy says no, and you get this relieved expression because he just trusts him. If you believe someone that easily, it's probably not even worth bothering asking the question. What was he expecting? The guy to just go, yeah, obviously, I want to wipe out all human life in the universe. Might make the show a bit more interesting, I guess. But for some reason, he says good, picks up the magic triangle, and attacks him with it. Like, he tries to hit him with it. But obviously it activates and sends out a massive wave of energy just like it did before. And we're back at the I'm crapping myself stage. I don't know, maybe his suit can handle it. I don't know what kind of systems we've got there. We already had gas exchange, maybe there's a waste exchange as well. But it does make all of the lunatics start climbing the walls, which probably isn't that big of a difference. It is a lunatic asylum to begin with. It just seems like normal behavior. And he just keeps staring at it, like, oh, there's all these lights and LEDs. I don't know why he's so amazed by it. He's seen it before. Then he gets these memory flashes again, which is the same memory flashes we saw in the last episode, which presumably are only in this one in case you didn't bother to watch the pilot and you're just joining the series now. I can understand this if it's a show which is shown on TV. But when it's shown on a streaming platform, and therefore they're on demand and you can watch the first one whenever you want, there's no excuse for just repeating it all over again. But either way, he shoves it back in the box because he doesn't want to see himself as a child anymore. And that guy starts screaming on the floor, rocking back and forth because he's seen an LED for once. Presumably it's triggered like memories of when he was on the ship before when he last saw them activated. I don't know. But he starts screaming, what are you, what are you? Even though he's literally 30 seconds ago described people that can activate the magic triangle as blessed ones. So the answer, presumably, is a blessed one. I've got an awful memory, but this is awful. And he just starts screaming about how you've made it come to life, but you're different than the one they have, meaning the Covenant, meaning the woman in the neck brace that we've seen. And I don't know how he's meant to be different or how that guy knows, considering he just saw an LED light up. The lunatic badly explaining something isn't interesting. It doesn't make it delivered to us in an improved way in any manner. It just makes it really annoying. And the best part of the scene is where he smashes him into a wall. Kwan next, anybody? But he actually says that essentially they're all after the ring, and the ring is a door. But then, knowing how this show answers questions, they really wanted to tempt fate, because we get this.
What is that ring?
And this.
To what?
And I just wanted him to say, I don't know. That's all I wanted. But essentially, it's a door to the end of life as we know it. This is a weapon to end all weapons. Well, at least if you're a human anyway. But this is Master Chief, never one to be the brightest person in the room, at least in this TV series, has decided that after hearing that this is a doorway to end all of human life in the universe, says this.
Oh, it's a weapon.
What else could it be? No, it's one of those non-weapons which just happens to destroy all of life. And he says, you know what to do. Destroy the artifact, then destroy yourself. And I'm just thinking, can we at least get rid of Kwan first? I don't think it's much to ask for after all that. I kind of think that Kwan agrees, to be honest. But he just picks up the magic triangle and walks out. And he decides that after being told that there's a weapon that will destroy all of human life on Earth, he has to go back to the UNSC. He's still walking around among all these criminals with a bounty on him with no helmet on, though. Especially when he's discovered that he's carrying around with him the key to destroying all of human life in the universe. He's still not thought, yeah, maybe I should be armored so I can protect it. But it's understandable why, so we can see his one single expression. And I don't really know what's going on, because he's like, no, I need the other Spartans, I need the UNSC. And the guy's like, no, we can figure it out here. What? On your defenseless asteroid? You think you can defeat the Covenant and defend a weapon that could destroy all of human life in the universe? There is literal sparks coming out of your ceiling. I don't think you're really technologically equipped for this. That's why Master Chief's like, no, I need the other Spartans. And he's like, you need them, not me. And I'm like, well, yes, you don't even have your helmet either, because for some reason, you didn't take it with you? I don't know. And he's like, oh, yeah, anytime there's a problem, you're running back to mommy. It's like, he's just found out he has a weapon and is holding a weapon that could destroy all of human life in the universe. And so he's running back to the humans who have the resources to deal with this in some way. Like, for once, his logic actually makes sense, and so the scriptwriters get someone else to call him an idiot for it, and he's getting all up in his face as if he's trying to provoke a fight. Master Chief really should put his helmet on. Doesn't seem like much of a choice. Even if you don't like the UNSC, they are at least human, and therefore will not want the weapon to go off. At this point, everyone's objectives are aligned. And so now they're having a discussion about loyalty, and it's like, it doesn't really matter about loyalty. When you're all humans, and this is a weapon against all humans, you should probably join forces, if anything. If this boat sinks, we're all going to sink. But no, instead, we're going to talk about our child and about how we've got 5 minutes. It's like, you've been with him all of this time, and you're still banging on about that. It's like, well, you've helped him this far. It can't have been that big a deal to you. But the moment you get into an argument, you start bringing up every little point that you can score from the past. Seriously, it's like arguing with a type B here. And he starts guilt-tripping. Oh, yeah, well, that 5 minutes they shot me down, I was licking off bark and beetles. I'm like, well, okay, but what does any of that have to do with the discussion that we're having about a key that destroys the universe? They're now screaming at each other, charging after each other down a corridor. This is literally the trope of feelings in corridors, which is what basically The Flash and every other CW show actually is. It's completely and utterly ridiculous. Oh, look, now we're going to discuss our feelings in a different corridor. I hope that's enough variety for you. But there is one good thing that happens. He tells Kwan to stay among all of the criminals while she's got a bounty on her. I'm like, this is going to be good. He's asking an ex-Spartan who doesn't even wear his helmet to protect somebody else. At this point, I'm kind of liking my odds that Kwan won't be in episode 3 for very long. Look how tiny she is! She's barely in the camera shot. This is a person who earlier was talking about taking revenge on the Covenant when she probably comes up to their knees. She actually even looks like his child. It's ridiculous. I know it worked for Baby Yoda, but seriously, we didn't need someone that the Master Chief could carry around. But he does decide to leave her, and so at least the show gets 1 point rather than a complete 0. Anything that can possibly result in Kwan getting less screen time is a net gain. Now, I would like to note, he's now put his helmet on, and there's all this music, and it's like, ha ha ha, like it's a big major deal. You mean, he spent this time walking around criminals who could all shoot him in the face without it. And now, when he's decided to voluntarily surrender To the people who he knows won't hurt him, he's put his helmet on to protect him from his own people. This is an advanced, trained military soldier who only puts his armor on around people who won't hurt him and takes it off around criminals that absolutely would. The door closing, blocking out Kwan from the rest of the episode, is the single best thing that could possibly have happened to this entire series. So then he gets in his ship, flies off, and reactivates the beacon so that the Spartans can find him. And now he is leaving the dangerous location in safety. He can now fly the ship with his helmet on, which he couldn't do on the entranceway, even though that was the dangerous bit with all of the asteroids that he needed to be protected from. The amount of music going on trying to make out this is a big deal because he just flipped a button to turn his beacon on is insane. They're like, oh no, he turned his beacon on, this is amazing. Oh, he turned on his beacon. That's a beacon. We're gonna get his beacon. They've seen my beacon. This is us going after his beacon. We've all got his beacon. So at the end of the episode, he returns to the UNSC headquarters, which is where he left at the end of the first episode. They even land in the same place. They walk off in the same location. The end of the second episode finishes at the same point as the first episode. So, if in that first episode he hadn't touched the magic triangle and flown off, we would be in exactly the same place we are now, except we would have saved an hour of everybody's lives. This wasn't just a filler episode. This is an episode that you could delete from the series and nothing would have changed. Even down to Kwan, because if Kwan landed with them in the first time because they couldn't escape, they would have followed through with the assassination order, and so he still would have been on his own. Anything that he found out on the asteroid would also have been discovered by Halsey when she actually gets the device to study. This entire episode was not only dull and boring, it was pointless. It had no reason to exist, because Master Chief is still taken into custody. The magic triangle is still on Earth and Halsey still goes to actually discover it. The only difference is that Kwan is actually alive on an asteroid, and I consider that a net loss. But here we are with Master Chief being marched along in his pajamas again. So the only time he put his helmet on, it was for people that weren't going to harm him, who were immediately going to take it off. But Halsey turns up and she goes and collects the magic triangle. And for some reason, he needs to stare at her as if he's going to do anything. I don't even know. It's so desperate that we see his face all the time, just so we can work out his one single expression. She's come along to look at the thing that she can't touch because she has no right to, even though for some reason she thinks that she deserves everything given to her for absolutely no reason whatsoever. She's just got entitlement dripping off her. We had to stand up the device in the most pretentious way possible. I mean, we couldn't just lay it flat on a table. That'd be too easy. Could even put it the other way around so it was more of a pyramid and would just stand on its own. But instead, no. We want to show off our own technology by making it stand on the pointy end. This is a scene where Halsey walks into a room and stares at the magic triangle. No, that's it. That's all that she does. Oh, look, I'm staring at it. I'm still staring at it. Now I'm smiling and staring at it. This is a man in prison in his pajamas. But it's alright, he's got a visitor. Bearing in mind that when he landed, he was escorted by 3 Spartans and an entire army. Now he's in prison. They're just letting anyone in on their own to see him like he's not a risk at all. But it turns out he's been interrogated and he's told them everything, that it's a Covenant weapon, it's probably going to destroy all human life on Earth, and apparently she's passed all that on to the group. And she's like, well, if we discover that it might point to that, then we'll engage that possibility when it happens. Like, you don't seem to be that bothered about the weapon that's going to destroy all of human life in the universe. Because she's so concerned that apparently his actions have made her job more difficult with the other Spartans. I'm not sure you've got your priorities sorted out straight, love.
She's like, you've caused so many problems for me. Rah!
He's given you a weapon which can destroy all human life. Nobody cares about your fee-fees. I'm so sorry he's provided you with some more paperwork to do, dear. This definitely isn't just another CW scene, which allows us to talk about your fee-fees in a room again. The more Master Chief talks about his feelings, the more I want to stop feeling anything at all. And so when Halsey goes, I don't think that's a good line to go down and talk about, I'm like, oh, thank you. At least somebody said something good in the episode. I wanted a TV show which was essentially similar to John Wick fighting aliens, and instead what I ended up with is more like an episode of Downton Abbey. And she says, what was it about the girl that made you run? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was a complete and utter lack of charm that did it. It's got flaring nostrils. That's how you can tell her rage, even though the rest of her face doesn't move. And then we get to see this Type B take her neck brace off. And I can't actually show you it because they show you a lot more than just her neck. You know what I mean? And this is his same expression, but where he looks downwards. And he's like, I know it's out there. I don't know what it is, but I know it's out there. It's a feeling. And I'm like, can we stop discussing your feelings? I don't care whether you can feel an interdimensional space station that can destroy all human life. At this point, can we just stop talking about how everyone feels all of the time?
I don't usually feel anything.
Can we go back to that, please? I'm fed up of discussing it all. This entire episode, from start to finish, has just been about people's feelings. And the minimum level that I require to even begin to consider your feelings are that you actually exist. These people are here to entertain me. And there is nothing entertaining about anyone's feelings. Can we go back to the bit where you're the super soldier that shoots aliens in the face, please? I think that would actually be interesting. You know, like the entire game series is. Some people might call it Halo. Then why did you come back? It was like a reasonable question. Honestly, at this point, I'm still half expecting him to go, I don't know. And he looks at his hand. The smiley face, because he cares so much about that little child who stamped that smiley face on his hands, which he only saw for 12 seconds of a scene. I mean, the genuine response should be, I found out there was a weapon that was going to wipe out all of human life in the universe, and I thought that would be important, and you have the most resources, and so you were probably the most likely ones to be able to do something about it against the evil aliens that want to wipe us all out. That is perfectly reasonable and logical to do, and doesn't involve feelings. And he says, there's nobody else I could trust. When obviously he's actually thinking, no, I actually could trust that little child. But that little child wasn't going to help you fend off the Covenant, was it? But obviously now we come down to trust because of his feelings. And she smirks because she knows she's got one over on him. Because she believes him. Now obviously he's lying, he doesn't actually trust her. But she thinks her training still works, and so now she can actually trust him back. This is again something that they think is incredibly deep and complicated, when actually it's really simple and isn't a big moment at all. I just know that this episode should come with some kind of side effect warning, because I think this has permanently damaged my sense of taste. And then we cut to her and the Tim the Tatman Type B, and she unlocks the sort of shield she's encased in, obviously waking up what is presumably Cortana. Well, the narrator goes, we're going to do great things together, obviously speaking to Master Chief, but also meaning the new Tim the Tatman Type B. Oh, and then it's over. If you want a word to describe this entire episode, it was pointless. We didn't arrive anywhere, nothing changed. You could have deleted this entire episode and just carried on from episode 1 and nothing else would have been different. We didn't need him to escape with a magic triangle at first for no reason that made no sense that everybody took the piss out of. We could have actually had this episode at UNSC and then we could have had Master Chief going off and shooting some more aliens and, you know, having a bit of entertainment in the show for once. Instead, what we get is an entire hour of people talking about their feelings, which is my most despised thing about any show. The CW is renowned for talking about feelings in corridors, and that is literally what happened during this entire show. Except sometimes it wasn't in a corridor. Sometimes it was also in a prison cell. Everyone's plans were stupid. It was all acted like this was some big, complicated, deep plot. And the one time that someone did actually have a good idea, which was when the Master Chief decided he was going to go back to them, he was immediately attacked for it and treated like he was the bad guy, even though it was the first time anyone's made a good decision in the entire series. And we continue the tradition of every Type B being a complete idiot, and Master Chief joining them as well, because he decides to spend most of the time outside of his suit, with his helmet off as well, when the bits where he is in his suit, just so he's at risk of dying in a criminal underworld base. All in all, he spent maybe 10 to 12 seconds in his full suit in this entire episode. And he only decided to do that when he chose to go back voluntarily to people that he knew weren't going to hurt him. The only time he wore his protective armor was when he was completely and utterly safe. Even going through an asteroid belt that he thought might die in still wasn't enough for him to actually put on his protective armor. All in all, this might be some of the worst television I've ever seen. It was certainly the most boring, and making this entire thing and filming it was awful. If you thought I didn't talk about much of the plot, it's because there wasn't a plot, and yet I still had to make something that was vaguely interesting to watch. And that basically meant not talking about much of it. I kind of think that filming this, I've kind of lost my mind over the last few hours, because this has been recorded for 3.5 hours. Lots of it is cut out. Lots of it is just big, empty space. I just walk off because I need a break halfway through, and then I edit it all down into something that vaguely makes sense. Honestly, I wish they'd done that with the show. They could have edited this entire hour of footage down to 0 and just started at the end of episode 1, and I think more people would have been happy. It also would have meant we could have got Kwan from the series, and that may have made this episode at least a 2. Instead, I'm only going to give it a 1, and that is simply because at one point he ditched Kwan, and I kind of feel that a good deed like that should at least be rewarded. as it might temporarily mean we don't see her for a bit. Also, he ditched her with another Spartan too stupid to wear a helmet, so hopefully those bounty hunters actually get their way. Oh, we can dream. Now, after the horror that was episode 1, I didn't expect it to get worse. I certainly, in a 10-episode series, didn't expect a filler episode. Especially as the second one. If the first one lost viewers, this one certainly will. They will not be actually putting out viewer numbers after this one, I can tell you that for nothing. If anyone was giving this show the benefit of the doubt, and can sit through this episode, and still want to see episode 3, then I don't actually know where your quality bar for a TV series actually lands, but I'm pretty sure it's one I couldn't limbo under. If Master Chief taking off his helmet was designed as a mission statement, then this was their entire cast and crew just giving every Halo fan the finger and grinning while they did it. There wasn't a single moment of entertainment or joy in this, except maybe the going through the asteroids. That was pretty cool. Unfortunately, that was spoiled by Kwan going, "Ah!" So, you know, kind of comes out as a wash. But my main takeaway from this episode is, quite frankly, that I'm just glad it's over. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you, unfortunately, on the next one. Bye-bye.